do as government. So yes, it is a plan. It is working to a large extent. As human beings, it's human nature. You know, somebody sits with you, hangs out, has a drink, tea with you, you become more malleable. You'd have to be really thick-skinned to say, I don't care that we're sitting out here. The moment I walk out that door, I'm picking up my baseball bat.
Are there any detriments to them being more open and more accessible? We know they hosted members of the Muslim community also to break the fast last week. But will there come a time that this exposure or overexposure, some may call it in the media, will there come a time that that will hurt them?
It's just basic. They came in and realized they don't have the total support of the voting country. You can debate how much of the citizenry is behind us. How do you reach them? That's what I'm saying. They had to map out this country. How do you reach this country? And one of the avenues is working through the media. That's stage one. They've got to find out how to reach these guys. Now, the problem is, you're trying to win public confidence. That remains the #1 priority. They've got to put Kenyans away from that competition that was such a close call. They have to move that conversation forward so that with every reporting, every discussion, whether at the salon, whether in the bar, whether in the office, whatever the setup is, the conversation has to move beyond, it was such a close call. You understand? One of the ways to do that, you've got to put yourself out. There is no comfort in winning people over. So we are here,
we are the leaders, we are running this.
So they have to put themselves out. They have to show that we were confident about this. We had a plan, and guess what? We are open for you to come and check it out. So what you're calling detrimental would be, in this day and age when everybody can record any happening, from their phones, from whatever it is, people have evidence that you spoke, you said, they've just raised the levels of accountability. They cannot now enjoy the typical Kenyan politician comfort. I was misquoted. It was taken out of context. Not these guys. These guys have put themselves out there at the market, and they're standing on their platform and saying, I'm here. And it's going to go on record.
And
ask
not
me
this
about
time.
it.
Yes. Martin, everybody's saying that editors were called there, and there's a lot that's happening now, and it was an attempt to compromise members of the Fourth Estate. You are one of those editors. You were given tea. You were given cake.
You go, but it's not a fair statement. The compromise part is just...
My chairman was very clear, Macharia guy, though, was very clear on this. He put it very well, and he was live on television. He told everybody who was thinking otherwise that, look here, we are here not because we've come here to be compromised.
Exactly.
No, we came here because we heeded to an invitation from the president.
In effect, saying there's nothing wrong with members of the press meeting the president.
Absolutely. We have our own ethics, we have our own way of doing things. Why would we fear?
There's no
Trust me, if William Ruto or Uhuru Kenyatta does something wrong, I will say it. They're my friends. I know them. I've seen them come into politics. If they do something wrong, I will tell them. I've always told them. There are times they're not happy with me, and we still are buddies. So it's nothing new. So it's something that people, you know, we are coming out from a mindset that the way Macharia Gaither put it, we're coming from a mindset whereby people, when they visited State House, there was always this perception.
There's a cloak and dagger surrounding that whole process,
for sure that person has going to be compromised. That should not be the case. I'm happy even the way at least the two guys are doing it, because they have demystified the presidency. In terms of State House, they're showing people that State House is not some place where secret things happen or mystery occur there. I mean, this is your own taxpayers' house residence. There's nothing to fear. You can walk in, have a chat, have a cup of tea and get out. So it's not a mystery. It's good they're demystifying the presidency. For that, I'm giving them a plus. But that does not mean that when they do something wrong, we will keep quiet. We'll keep reporting. There are a lot of things that are happening. Like the ICC case is still hanging over their heads. We will report when that time comes. We will not keep shy away because now they invited us to State House. Now we will not talk about the ICC. The ICC case is going to come. We will report it. Whichever way it goes.
And they are suspects in that case.
I mean,
they are accused.
And I think we did say that a number of times on this show with you, Martin, that we cannot get away from the fact that they are suspects.
Absolutely.
They have been charged.
But
number
one, they're not trying to get away from it.
That's another thing.
Number two, it would be wrong for anybody to see mischief or compromise in that meeting. I mean, I've just given you, here's an example. And there's Martin, it's like you want to rubbish the stature of this guy and Gaither and say those guys are all crazy guys.
Editors, yes.
That would be, in fact, I would be twice as upset on Gaido's behalf that you're saying he went there and said rubbish.
Right.
He just went there and it was hot air. By the time these guys agreed for that meeting, it was both ends that realized it's a benefit for both of us. Because even as the media, you can be all strict and whatever it is you want to call yourselves, but you cannot keep reporting from the other side of the fence. You've got to find a gate in and say, so what's your story anyway? It helps, because otherwise you'll end up losing the confidence of the citizenry, because they'll ask you a very basic question. How do we know that your story checks out? Who
And
are
you
you
have
quoting?
no
What are your
way
sources?
to- okay.
You can't keep churning out stuff and Marty Kim say reliable sources.
Yeah.
What the heck is reliable
Now
sources?
you can actually say your source is...
Yes, now, and in that meeting, which was
Okay.
put out there live, you heard the principals actually tell people, look, there will be a system in which you can get this information. There's somebody who has to respond to you, and there's somebody who needs to answer to you. So now they've raised the expectation and they've given guidance to the country so that even when now Martin churns out his stuff, people know I need to see a response, then his story checks out.
Okay.
That was what happened
All right.
in that session.
Okay.
So the flip side is that would you rather that we continued with the secrecy of the
Okay.
mysteries of State House such
So
that
that
it's
State
only
House
a
is there,
preserve
media
of-
is here?
yes, a
Okay.
preserve of Uhuru Kenyatta and William Ruto alone,
Fair
and
point.
nobody else gets there?
Fair
Or would you like to see a situation?
Would you like
whereby-
to know what's happening inside, the precincts
What
of
people
State House?
need to note, and maybe somebody has done this out there, there's a lot of people writing columns now, but there's a narrative that people need to understand. Uhuru Kenyatta is a prince. He was a prince in waiting. This is not your regular politician. And a lot of things he will react to now and behave towards are the things you see in a monarchy. When somebody's told, your subjects will be happy if you do this. And because to him, there's no personal loss to him. Like we said, it's not a guy who's waiting for a deal. You're not going to go to that guy and say, I have a deal. I can build 6 apartments, I'll give you 2. He's not that kind of a president, okay? You can't say, I want to build a road, okay? I'll quote for 10 meter and then I'll give you 2. He's not that kind of a guy. So you need to understand what are the things that actually would be problems to one Uhuru Kenyatta. He was raised as a prince. So the thing, and that is why this synergy, this will be a case study for years to come. The synergy between a prince who's now gone into power and an ordinary, sharp, bright citizen who was driven by sheer and pure ambition
yeah.
in the name of William Ruto.
Right.
Now, how those two managed to run a country, that's where the story is.
Okay.
Because they're not from the same breed. And they've come from separate places. And to the most that we can see now, they're actually trying to say, how do you make this work? I mean, this has to look good.
All right, okay. Let's talk about the IEBC last week, and they were releasing the final tally of the March 4th elections to the Parliamentary Legal Affairs Committee, and they were asked to take an oath.
Which we have taken here very easily.
Which we have taken. Perhaps at the,
We're very proud of it, and we're not afraid.
perhaps at the end of the show,
somebody
we will
pops
tell you
up
what
and
the
asks
oath
about
was
the oath.
about. Yes.
We're very proud
By
of
the
our
way,
oath.
no, I think we really should reveal this.
No.
At some point.
No, we refuse.
Lest
But listen,
lest we are accused of,
no, you know we're Africans.
being in MRC, March 4th movement kind of things.
One of the things about taking an oath, your mouth might get stuck here. And we'll have a problem. So
Which is probably why the IEBC commissioners
let's
refused.
talk about IBC. Leave
Which is
us for a
probably
while.
why they decided not to take the oath because, their mouths would get stuck or
Tell us
something
about
like
IEBC.
that.
What do you want to know?
Yes. Of course, Rachel Shebesh later on said, why should they be required to take an oath? Isaac Hassan talked about his faith, preventing him from doing that at this time specifically. Were they required to take an oath before presenting these results to the parliamentary committee?
Okay, you can understand where that committee was coming from, because this issue of the final tally has been the bone of contention in the country. It is something that, for sure, that is something they ought to have done a long time ago. How many months are we in after the last elections? It shouldn't have been. So there are fears maybe in that committee that probably they are bringing doctored results before them, and they wanted them to come on record for posterity and for the record to ensure that whatever they are giving is the correct version. So if there was nothing to fear, I don't think they should have. I mean, they would have feared in terms of taking.
But Martin, the problem is, where is the structure? See, this is the challenge we keep having in this country. We cannot keep on, winging things. We were winging it. So today something happens and we will depend on the alacrity and brightness of a certain individual in the room. Why did we work so hard to bring out a constitution that doesn't speak to such matters? There must be an instrument of law that would guide such interaction. Not people sitting there and deciding, hang on, I think we should, because
the
motivation
thing is, has this
there,
precedent been set before?
the motivation,
everyone coming before the committee,
no,
do they
that's what I'm saying. We need to find out what is this about. And also, for me, it's very clear. The motivation was not structure. The motivation was not, this is the way to heal the country. The motivation was vindictive. Because in this country now, let me explain this.
Okay.
This is a country where now, before you step up for public office, everybody knows that is a chance where we will undress you in public, okay? And that is what certain people have begun leaning towards. So when somebody tells you, swear, take an oath, why they're doing that is tomorrow at the inquiry, all we have to say is, but you swore, and this is why we'll deal with you. It's vindictive in the sense that this is a way to get to you tomorrow when we have to say, now we are actually making this a criminal case, or we're now actually taking this at inquest level. That is what the motivation was. So now we can get you because you swore, you took an oath. And that is what people are fighting about at those levels. So I would want to know, what was that, what was the precedent? Where did they pick this up from?
I think which is
and what is the flip side? In terms
if they didn't take the oath, they presented that, yes.
The question is, did they accept the presentation?
Yes.
The presentation was accepted.
So to what extent did the oath have a bearing on those numbers?
Now the problem is, look at the rider is the statement that Isaac made, that we are in the month of Ramadan and you can't lie in the month of Ramadan.
Yes.
So what does that mean?
Guys, don't forget, as much as politicians...
What are you trying to say?
Listen, here's the thing.
No. I'd like you to finish that off, because I want to say yes, because it's the month of Ramadan and they're not allowed to lie.
That's what he said.
If it was not the month of Ramadan, there's somewhere you're heading with that, Martin.
That ended there. That ended there. There's no continuance. There's no continuance.
No, there is a continuance.
Where would you go with that?
No, because I want to hear that statement from Martin. Meaning, if this was done after Ramadan, what are you trying to say?
If it was not done Ramadan, maybe they would have taken the oath and then they would have presented.
No.
Or they would have... That's everybody's guess.
That's speculative.
But why would you say that?
Because as much as the politicians are fighting for personality growth, why do you think these other guys won't fight for their own names? Isaac is fast going down the drain. I mean, this is a guy who's grappling and groping, and they keep flashing him down, and he keeps rearing his head up. So this is a guy who's saying, there's a little of Isaac left. He's speaking for himself. I mean, the guy is trying to say, as a person, I'm still an honest guy.
Okay.
He was fighting for his own space.
You're an honest guy, but you can't take an oath, because if you do, you will not be able to lie.
That's debatable. Look at it this way.
Yes.
The thing about IBC is you cannot put that burden on one guy. Let's not forget, this was an institution built upon strictly by one Raila Odinga sending his chaps there and the other guys in the chaps. This is how they formed that team.
But the buck stops somewhere.
Even if it does, are you the kind of guy who's going to carry half the team is clipping at your heels, and you're going to stand up there and say, I'm going to take an oath on this.
Right.
It's Christmas for those guys.
Fine.
But when this happened to the last IBC, my good friend Kivitu, everybody crucified him.
Well,
the buck stopped.
And you see, he didn't have to take an oath then, did he?
I would have imagined that is why this country should accelerate the speed within which we work towards building institutions away from personalities, because now why are we fighting Isaac? What can Isaac give us? Supposing Isaac walks up tomorrow and sits here and says, you know, I've been a very bad man, I'm so sorry, what are we going to do? Jail him?
Nobody is fighting him. We only want to see things happening the way they're supposed to happen.
Why pick on him?
He's the chairman of this commission,
that's what I'm saying. So
and he was taking a report to Parliament.
So if he comes here tomorrow and tells Yvonne, I've been a very bad man, and actually I feel so guilty, I can't sleep at night. Kenyans, I presented myself to you. What are we supposed to do? Take him to United States and hang him?
No, he doesn't need to do that.
All right, fine.
If he's
my fight is sort out IBC as an institution. These other people, we can slap them around, yes, a little, and then they can go sit home and have tea and mandazi, that's fine. But we need IBC to continue working.
All right.
We need to understand it is a shared responsibility.
Fine. Here's the thing, gentlemen, whether or not they took the oath, their findings, they are bound by the report that they have presented to Parliament. Meaning, if at some point it is found that what they presented to Parliament was not factual was not correct, and that there was some sort of mischief, in presenting that, will they still not be held to account?
They will, definitely.
Will they still not?
hang him to that.
Will we still not have criminal proceedings against Ishaq Hassan? Say, knock on wood, hypothetically speaking, if we find that Ishaq Hassan himself was involved in tweaking the numbers in favor of one candidate or another, will he still not be liable to criminal charges?
Hypothetically, yes.
Yes, he. Well, I know where you're heading with that one. But here's the thing for me: oath or not, he has presented those findings as true by the IEBC. That this is how we counted: Martin 1, Louis 2, Martin 3, Louis 7, and that is what it is. Meaning they would be held responsible for that report,
look,
oath or not.
For me, the thing is to try and find out the depth of responsibility at IEBC. For me, it's a redundant quest because it is very clear. Has IEBC messed up? It's as loud as a football billboard, all right? So to try and wake this country up to the fact that I have discovered that IEBC messed up, that's a redundant conversation we're having as a country. What we need to work at now is just to understand, we've got to fix this institution. And in the face of all these things that have been going wrong, what is the satisfaction in hanging Isaac? And that is why, if people listen cleanly to what the judge said in the Kathy story, he even said, just because IEBC has been tripping up, it doesn't mean we continue. Because they've faltered, they've done mistakes. So we also fit into one of those mistakes and say, carry on, doctor, it shall be fine.
However, if there are big mistakes,
there's no big or small. These people need to be, need to be cleaned out.
No big or no small mistakes, but usually, and to some extent I agree with Martin on this one, the buck does stop somewhere.
But so somebody what if it does?
Yes, but then that person needs to
what? So
be
you hang his act. Does that make IEBC better?
No, but it all can be done together.
Is there anybody in this country who doubts that IEBC was a family circus? Is there anybody who doubts that? So what new fact are we waiting for?
No, but you see...
I mean, really.
Okay, fine. So what is the way forward? Because
clean up the institution.
But and if certain individuals are found to be responsible for some of those mistakes, and hypothetically again, if Ishaq Hassan is found to have been responsible either by commission or omission, by negligence or whatever, as part of the cleanup.
As part of the cleanup, there will be due process.
Okay,
and he will be lined up in the due process system.
Okay.
It should not depend on the rhetoric between Martin and Louis, that if Martin has heavier rhetoric, let's hang Isaac.
Point made, point made. I'd like us to move away from that one because Rachel Shebesh had talked about this.
Why are you hiring Rachel Shebesh?
No, because it's heading somewhere.
What's the level of leverage that
Rachel
has?
To speed. What did she say?
I mean, by the time you're telling me Rachel has to be the one to choose direction in this country, I'm a bit worried. Tell me.
What did she say?
I mean, why would I be high? I can be high on what Duale said. But really, Rachel?
Are we going there again? Because Louis, this is starting to seem like it's something with you and women, huh?
I would like to hear the
First it was Kathy Kilonzo and tea and flowers and candy, and now it's Rachel Shebesh. That is not even the point. Yes,
I'm
and
not
now it's
Rachel any candy or whatever.
Well, let's hope not. But
what was
this
the
is
argument?
what I was saying. I was trying to. There's a segue here. Rachel Shebesh was talking about this IEBC matter, and she was talking about this in Cabernet Town in Baringo County at a victory.
Setup.
Yes, it was at a victory. Regardless of what that is said, that's done. But it was at a victory celebration for Phyllis Kandie, who's just made it to cabinet secretary. Am I the only one who 1 + 1 equals, I don't know, that cabinet secretaries are having victory parties?
Okay, what do you want us to address? Phyllis Kandie's event?
Phyllis Kandie's event.
Which Rachel Shebesh?
No. Move away from Rachel Shebesh.
You started Rachel Shebesh.
Yes, because we were linking it to that. It was such an important thing that this is what was important. Rachel Shebesh, Deputy President William Ruto, and several other politicians were making political statements at a victory party for a cabinet secretary. Forget Rachel Shebesh.
No, she said it. Forget Rachel Shebesh. Now let's proceed.
Let's proceed.
I
just need you to say that.
For some reason, you also seem to be stuck on that one. Can we move on now?
Forget Rachel Shebesh. Yes.
Is something not right with this picture? It's like something's wrong with the jigsaw puzzle.
Homecoming.
Yes. Why are we having a homecoming party for Phyllis Kandie and perhaps others? And we have politicians there, and they're making political statements, and they're supposed to distance themselves. Of course, it's not like when a political statement is made, if they're in church, I don't expect them to stand up and leave. But am I the only one who has
I
a
think,
question
yes,
about cabinet secretaries having
There we go
homecoming
now.
parties?
I think then William
And they're
Ruto,
not politicians?
William Ruto then here has taken a very bad route. He needs to slow down on this unless he wants to maybe in terms of pacifying the rift or wherever he's going. Or we demarcated cabinet secretaries from politics. That is a fact. That is, it's not just William Ruto. I hope also Uhuru Kenyatta or anybody else will not pick the nominees that they perceive to be the people they placed there to go for their victory parties. Then that will give a very different kind of picture.
Who's paying for this homecoming party?
Definitely with all the state machinery.
Because when she goes there, she is, yes.
You don't
there
need
we
to
go.
ask.
Okay.
Your guess is as
Here's
good as
the
mine.
thing.
If you have a cabinet secretary there, you have the deputy president there, you have all these other cabinet secretaries coming also to be flower girls and flower boys. Definitely you understand who is paying for that and the kind of state resources that are going to be employed.
And you thought I'm the bad guy. Did you just hear that?
No, we will tell them.
Yes.
We will tell them the way
Right.
it is.
And here you are. Look,
Thank you very
I'm very
much.
clear on
We
one
will
thing.
tell them.
The way it is.
Thank
it
you.
is.
Yeah,
so
pun
it is
intended.
like this. It
Very
is
nice.
wrong. You're sending a wrong picture. If you have, if whoever cabinet secretary wants to have a victory party, he should go with his family, have his own people, who are around the place there, and it's purely a Thanksgiving thing.
Because for
it
me,
should not be
here's
a
the thing.
political rally, a baraza,
Yes.
where now political statements
And this
are
is
being made.
this is what I was referring to with Rachel Chebesh going up there and saying something about the IEBC, Deputy President William Ruto doing the same thing. We had these political statements being made on that
Do you remember
platform.
when everyone's project every day was to fight one President, Daniel Arap Moi? And one of the things they all said, separately, collectively, is one of the things they complained about is President Moi's roadside declarations. And they said, this is a country that is modern, we can't have people. And yet, the same digital guys are not moving away from those roadside declarations. The same challenge we had with the teachers' strike. We were sitting here and telling them, don't go and make passionate speeches out there in informal settings and say, we want to talk to these guys. And all you have to do is put a letter and invite them to State House. What the Deputy President did was wrong. That was a serious goof. But I can understand, these are guys who've just come from, they've been brawlers, okay? They've just come from competition. So there's a natural itch to respond. Somebody says something and you think, I can take this, then at some point you're like, they can't get away with this. And you come out bat swinging there told, your role has changed. So as much as he put out a fantastic challenge,
Indeed, and what he said, yes, was
as much
quite,
as he put that out,
okay.
he forgot that one of the things they invited us to see at State House is that they now have elaborate communication machinery,
Right.
okay? Where such matters, we will then know what his position is. He has a press secretary, Mgonye. They have an office, and we would have been invited there and he would have said, look,
This is the
my
Deputy
position.
President's position.
If you're going to choose that event to do that, then we cannot separate you from the other characters who are shouting around at funerals and weddings. How do I separate you from those guys? So that he should now resist that personal itch to take a swipe back, even when it is totally nonsense they're throwing at you. That is the reason why you brought the media to State House to say, we're going to do it differently. You haven't even, is it even 2-3 weeks out of that?
No.
And you've gone back to your old habits.
Right.
Really, it's wrong. So if Phyllis can DIY to have a bash, I don't care that they can shut down the whole village and everybody comes to it. That's fantastic. You cannot take away from Kenyans. We like to celebrate our own. That is not what I would fight. But that they would take that now to be a platform to take swipes and send barbs against a competition, it cheapened the event. And she became a space cadet in her own event.
Right.
Was she actually allowed to speak? Did you?
I didn't even hear.
No.
You see, that is the days of that is the days of old. It's an event, someone died or someone did what, but we never get to understand why these people were speaking where they were speaking.
Right.
Because now Nairobi issues are being addressed in villages. So that was wrong. In my estimation, that was a serious goof in terms of leadership.
And here's the thing, Martin, and perhaps we can find out, lest we get into speculation and conjecture. I would like to know, and perhaps over the next 7 days we can find this out, who paid for that? Because I would be upset if that's my tax money. mean, seriously, I have no problem, by the way, and truth be told,
Yvonne,
truth be told,
no,
I am going to be open-minded. If I became a cabinet secretary, of course, we must have a Thanksgiving, we must say thank you to God because I'm a woman and from a certain community. I have no problem with that.
I'm going to say this.
I have a problem with it being on that platform and people being fed, and that's my tax bill.
Okay. You will not find it.
Until the facts show different, I'm happy to settle for the thought that Phyllis Kandie and her people and her supporters can pick up that tab.
Okay.
That's how I choose looking.
Let's err on the side of
this
caution.
Guy wants to give me a Panadol moment. This is a serious Panadol moment.
Yes,
this guy
is, right?
You must get it. You cannot. You're not living. You're living in this country. You're not living in mass. Definitely, where you have the president or the deputy president attending a function, that becomes a state function. Trust me, you cannot divorce that from anything else. And who pays for that? There's all sorts of state resources that are used to ensure that it becomes presidential.
Allow me to also say that if the deputy president is there, the one thing is that his security will be there, which he is entitled to for the next 4.5 years that he is in office. But it doesn't necessarily mean that the food that the people
Yvonne,
are being fed
you know what Matthew is saying? Usually
You've never attended
Listen, Yvonne.
I think let me give you benefit of doubt.
Understand something.
I have attended all these things and I know how the government works.
Yes.
Security is the least of the government resource you will see at a function. That is the least. You need to understand, by the time a senior state officer leaves Harambe Avenue, first of all, the chain of information going down till your local DO. Now they're even what are they now? County something or the other.
Or whatever.
It goes to them. You line up traffic police from here till there because they relay the information.
Right.
You've got the relevant ministries setting up that shop, making it up to scratch. It is a huge resource.
And here you were, the one who was erring on the side of caution. You said benefits of the doubt.
Unless the guy no, listen, I'm trying to explain to you something. If somebody comes out there at that level, you have to believe he didn't just pop out of the woodwork and carry his PA and say, by the way, there's a function down here, let's go, and then we can go to work after this. It doesn't happen. He's sitting there, he's speaking. Certain resources do come into play because of his presence or the president. Anywhere, even when the president wants to run off with 2-3 cars and say he just took 2-3 cars and went off to watch rugby, there's a general headache all around the place. People have to step up and go to work. Security has to mingle with those rugby fans. People have to do stuff. You cannot separate yourself from the activity your office generates. The question is, as much as the deputy president, his presence generated a cost to his office. So I'm not contradicting myself.
Okay.
He definitely generated a cost to his office.
Right.
My problem
Which is a cost to me.
Yeah, you can't avoid that.
Yes.
You elected him.
Yes.
He's always on the job. He's permanently on the job. He doesn't separate himself on the weekends. Now, what you need to avoid is, then don't invite him because you're inviting the Kenyan taxpayer to that event.
Okay.
And that is what I'm saying. To the event, whatever ugali and mboga, and they've got very good traditional food that's
yes.
They eat very
and some
healthy.
great goat meat from
So whatever that was happening on that end, better be Phyllis's tab. That's what I'm saying.
My hope and belief that they are watching us, and this is the first and the last, because we have how many of them?
I know, another 17.
17.
Yes.
And there will be. I hope, Lord, have mercy on us that doesn't happen. That they will have another 17 homecomings. It will be ridiculous. It will be business as usual. What will you have separated from what we used to have and what we are doing?
Because that was what I thought. Sorry, hang on. It's back to 2007. The message is
so wrong.
Okay.
So I hope Uhuru Kenyatta now will not also go to James Masharia's place on the other, and then Ruto to Kazungu Kambi's place and the other, and then what happens there? You cannot divorce when you give a politician a platform and he sees a crowd.
You can't tell him not to discuss politics. All right, very quickly, because I know we need to take a break, but here's a question that's coming in on Twitter. Where is it? Odek asks, would you comment on the president's choice to take a chopper from the airport now that we're talking about this? Good move, bad
Fantastic.
move, yes.
I was very happy.
Okay.
Because
it's a no-brainer, right?
Oh,
that's why I'm looking at you. What are we discussing?
Please, Uhuru Kenyatta, keep doing that every other time. Because you
know what Mombasa Road would have been like if he actually decided to use that road. It's a nightmare anyway.
Yeah.
Okay. So that's our taxpayers' money well spent.
Okay, but you need to be alive to the fact that it will always depend on what he's going to do and where he's coming from to go to.
Okay.
Because if he's coming to a function and he touches down.
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
obviously,
the
yes.
whole retinue that he carries.
Yeah.
Unless now you want to tell us, let's start seeing six, seven choppers
on the
dropping
way.
down
Okay.
there. You
Fine.
need to understand
But
his
as
position
and
as
when-
president.
as and
But
when
if
it
he's
can be
landed,
used-
if he's landed
Yes.
to go home,
Right.
well, he can afford to do that.
Yeah. Or from home to the airport, surely.
He can afford to do that.
Yeah, okay. All right. On that note, we take a short break. Right now, we'll be right back with lots of and numbers. So when we take a look at that and all this money that's being given to political parties, I think it'll be about 10 billion shillings over the next 5 years. Who then makes sure that this money is used in the right way? A political party is... Well, until this funding now, isn't it a private entity? It's a group of people that come together and say, the three of us will form party called The Way It Is, and this will be our, our rules and our bylaws and that sort of thing. Let's talk about this money that's being given to political parties and the three beneficiaries we know, TNA, ODM and URP.
Well, there's a very clear structure. There's even law about that. Because in the last parliament, they passed a law of political parties funding, which is that money is supposed to be distributed equally depending on the strength of each political party as per after the election, in terms of the numbers that each political party has in parliament. So there's a very clear structure. I don't think there should be any problem with that. The issue comes in whereby when this money now has been given to the political parties, what they do
next?
with it.
Yes.
That's where now you have there are lots of political parties that are around. I think we have not in excess of over 40 political parties in this country. But now that money is supposed to be shared out in terms of how each party performed. So even if you have one member of parliament or two members of parliament or even county representatives, you will be entitled to that funding, and it will be shared out in that formula that is stated out in the Political Parties Act. And that is the way it's supposed to be. So, but like I said, the problem comes in once that money has been shared out, you will find now that the political party leaders themselves are the ones who are going to be wrangling with themselves. So it depends on whether the political parties have clear structures and proper secretariats in terms of how they're supposed to run. It's supposed to aid them in running the parties devoid of any other issues that surround matters to do with politics. So if they have the parties meant to enhance capacity for their secretariat, for recruitment of members and stuff like that, to run the operation of the political parties.
This would be a good thing in terms of the fact that if, like we said, we started a party and Louis is the one who's putting in all the money, that the party is not run on his whims, but is about, the taxpayers as well.
Absolutely.
It's a good thing, right, Louis?
Well, this is what we keep saying, it's what I keep quarreling about, until we move away from focus on the personality. Because what we have now is a few individuals were wise to this conversation. And even though it was put out in the media, it wasn't well discussed, well understood that there will be money coming towards these entities. And a few guys knew this. And they knew, wrap some people together, put out a name, and I know this is what will sort out my bills in the next few years. Now, why are they doing this? Because they know they can still stand up there and say, I'm the guy who's bringing the numbers. I'm the woman who's making things work. I'm the guy who's going to get support. So how it's going to happen here depends on what I think, how I feel, and the secretariat really, we've never seen a secretariat that has managed to step up and tell their leadership, this is how it's going to go from today. So we're stuck in a situation where finally parts of the constitution regarding that are now coming into life, but we don't have a ready institution to absorb this kind of actuality. We still have individuals saying, it's mine. I put this together. I'm the one who brings the numbers.
And rightfully so.
Yeah.
I mean, if you make an investment into,
so you wait until
an
I
entity,
tell you how we're going to do it. I brought 10 seats or I brought one. It's really up to me.
Right.
So that is another fight on levels of exposure, levels of education, until we can challenge and say, but this is what the system calls for. So that when you understand, secretaries are put up as actually officers of duty, not where you throw in your cousins who didn't do well in O-level and your buddies who have time to spend, and then they set up a secretariat and they do what you say on Monday morning goes for the rest of the week. That is what has to creep in. But at this level, it depends on how those guys want to
And like you say, a requirement for them to receive these funds is that they've got to have the structures in place. So this might be a good thing for the parties themselves.
It is a good thing. It started at the last parliament. If you recall, when there was a larger PNU and there were several political parties in there, and it came a time when they were supposed to get this funding. and even Martha Karua with NAC said she's not part of PNU. She's not an affiliate of PNU, and she needs to be given her funding just as NAC Kenya. So she even went to court to fight that battle, and I think she won the fight. So she was given the funding as per the NAC Kenya. So it is supposed to be something that even the registrar of political parties come into place. I mean, to ensure that this kind of system is adhered to.
Okay.
Whether that is happening now, I don't know. It's something that is still a mystery. But I believe, because the structures are very clear on what each political party should get, depending on the numbers of representation in Parliament,
and the
both
Senate.
and it's one thing in Parliament, National Assembly and Senate, and how you're supposed, the strength that you have, the more numbers you have, the more amount of money you're supposed to get.
Okay.
So and it trickles all the way down.
All right. So a good thing, we'll wait and see what happens with this one. And of course, many of them are saying they're crippled now. And this is because the minute that this was announced that they were to receive some funds, all of those private donors, and, the ones who own the party and shikilia it together, have pulled out and said, so why am I going to keep spending my money when there's money coming from the government? And I do understand in few of these parties, the operations have ground to a halt.
Yes, the idea behind it was to detach these people who hold political parties at whims, in terms of they're the only ones who are funding the political parties. No, it shouldn't be that way, because if we are moving the West Wing, the direction, that is what is happening there. And I think in the wisdom of the last parliament, they came up with this to avoid situations whereby you only have the party that is in power all the time enjoys even state resources and has an advantage over the other political parties.
And who checks these political parties and how they spend the money?
It's supposed to be the registrar of political parties who has a duty to streamline operations of political parties. And there are checks and balances that are put in place that they can be able to ensure that the money that has been given to them, they also have to give an audit of how they've spent it, so that before they get, even when they have to get the next tranche, they will have given an audit of how they have spent that money.
Right. So Mombasa County now, and I think this is the same thing that's happening in not just in Mombasa County, in Nairobi as well. Evans Kidero having to fight off quite a bit of corruption. We had the allegations that he did fend off a 20 million shilling bribe when he'd just gotten into office. I think it was even before the swearing in, wasn't it?
Yes, it was before.
And now Mombasa, and there's also the Narok now County Council, and what's happening with the Masai Mara. Everybody's going there. But let's just talk about Mombasa for a moment. The council was in debt before the county government took over. Council estates are now being taken up by the debtors, and they're saying, you owe us money. Joho is saying, I'm taking these back. I promise you, the residents of Mombasa County, that Buxton will be back. And then he's got 700 people within the county who are all born on December the 1st. It can happen, I think, probably in a larger spectrum than Mombasa County. That 700 people who all happen to work for the
Joe
county
is a
council.
busy guy. He's about to earn his pay.
Yes, every
pay.
penny.
Well,
what is this like for the governors who've taken over these county councils, municipal councils, town councils that were riddled with corruption? It's a tough job, isn't it?
I doubt whether there's any single county that doesn't have such problems. All of them are reeling with debts. But I think it's a good thing that we have now the counties. It's time for the governors also to get down to work, and they have to clean up all this. I'm sure when they were vying for these positions, they knew what they were going to get into. Definitely is something that they'll need to deal with, and it's something that, because they will also need to generate their own revenue to be able to mitigate the kind of problems that they're undergoing. So it's something that, for me, it looks like teething problems, but with time they should be able to deal with them. I don't envy what Joho is going through.
Did you just go for the teeth again?
I don't envy what he's going through, because the same thing has also been here in Nairobi,
Nairobi,
for Kidero. and many other councils. Maybe my namesake Mutua is the one who's basking in glory, but maybe I hope he's not
sure
short-lived.
there's issues
I
there.
hope he's also sorting out his problems there. So it's something that the governors now need to come up with a master plan in terms of how they want to deal with these issues.
How easy will this be?
Several areas, of course, bigger than others. Nairobi,
Mombasa,
Kisumu, Nakuru.
Narok,
the stakes are much higher there.
Yes.
And you will definitely be more on call to sort it out. But Joho didn't just arrive from the village. He didn't just check in from Oman, which is the nearest seafront from there. So he cannot claim that he has been blindsided. But this is a change from what used to happen before. That is one of the municipal councils where the challenge was in the day of the election. If you wanted to sort out Mombasa and be comfortable and be safe in it, I remember how they used to run off with these councillors and hide them in hotels somewhere, and then the day of the election they win and it's done.
Yes.
After that, there's a bit of maneno in the council meetings, but now this is different because it's a running job. So one, he's going to earn his money. Two, he did claim to have a plan. When he was running for office, he did claim to have a plan. So what county was he planning for? Because if he was planning for a county he's lived in and claimed to know all corners of it, actually, he's in the best position now. He has the best opportunity to actually show us that when a governor is running with a plan, allow him or her to get into office and it will roll out. So now what we need to do is tell Joho, let it rip. Yeah,
roll out the plan.
Roll out the plan. Let's see. You've lived here. You know what it is. You promised us. I've got it all sorted.
But isn't that then
I'm the guy to do this.
the thing about leadership, though? You know, when you're on the outside, it's always easy to say.
He was never on the outside. He was in there.
Yes.
He knew what was happening.
Right, but you know, you are not the one. The buck stops with me. You are not that person.
Yes.
Now you are that person, and now you can no longer say, "Hey, what are you guys doing with the Mombasa City Council?"
This is how we shall build institutions.
Right.
So I love that example. He now has to look around, and he cannot no longer engage his buddies and sit around with the guys he likes and say, well, how do we do this? He now has to sit with professionals. He has to get expert opinion, and he has to be careful because even there you'll burn your fingers. There's no shortage of consultants who will come in and tell you, I've got the magic wand. This is what you need to do. 6 months more of rubbish. Problems again. And you got to pay these guys. Others, on top of the guys who are suing for county houses, now you'll have consultants suing for their money. I did a job for you. I don't care that it didn't work for you, but you owe me. So he has a perfect opportunity to roll out his promises. In fact, I'm thinking, go Joho.
How easy or tough will it be for him and the others?
It is tough. And he has a whole cabinet for him.
It is tough.
Let them devise ways and means of how they're going to run Mombasa. It is with them now. They will not start pointing fingers at the government, that the government has neglected us. No, it is them.
This is the only way we'll put a cap on these promises people make when they're running. Of moon and stars and milk and honey, this is how to put a cap on it.
And Joho has been born and bred up in Mombasa. He knows the problems there. So it is up to him to take up those problems and deal with them. He knows how, he should know how to deal with them because he ran for office knowing that he's going to sort out problems for Mombasa. Believe me, Mombasa is almost the heart of this country. If it is well managed, it can bring the kind of resources that this country will never even sort of dreamt to achieve. It is possible, it can be done. You have the main tourist hub in that particular area. So you can be able to, you have the only port within East Africa that is the East African countries are using. You have all those resources. It's up to you to draw that plan and map it out. See how many workers you need in that county, and you must be able to pay them well so that they can do the job well, and you will get the resources as well. So it is up to him. The ball is on his court. We can't tell him anything more. He's the one who was the buck stops with him.
Unless, of course, he was wishing to lead Mombasa County, but he had set up base camp and all his activities at Lamu.
It will be different. Lamu has its own county.
No, I'm saying unless he was in Lamu when he was running out his plan and everything, and that's where he was speaking from, and that's why he set up shop. No, I'm saying he can't. He does. What we're saying is he has no excuse.
He has run away from it.
We're saying he has no excuse. He's been there, so now put the work in.
It is possible.
I don't envy them at all.
Put the work in.
Narok and all the other governments.
You will recall when Najib Balala was the mayor, he made things happen. Don't start making me think that maybe Balala would have been the best choice to run that county. But he has now, the foot is on the other side.
Do you think we'll see change in all of these counties within the next 5 years? Because obviously the work that they've got, everything that they've got to reverse took several years.
But just a quick one, now that you mentioned Balala, I mean, just an aside, he's a perfect example of a guy who's working on the script that his boss has given him. He's been the perfect gentleman. He's not been invited. I hope he was not at that homecoming.
No, he wasn't. But he was with the Muslims when they were there.
That's fine.
That is okay.
But so far,
no politics.
Balala is doing...
Actually, no politics was discussed
he's
there.
perfect.
Remember, the president did actually say, if there's
the
one
job.
thing that I want, my legacy to be is that I brought Kenyans together.
I like Balala.
And those are the kind of statements I would like to hear.
Now that you brought him up, I like him. He's on point. And even now, in the way he's kept his peace and doing his job, Joho can't wake up and say, Balala is frustrating me. He can't wake up and say somebody's undermining me. You know, the typical things we like saying, we pick up somebody. We create somebody and decide that is the enemy.
Yeah, okay. Here we go. Before we run out of time, there's a tweet and there's also a text saying, why don't you discuss Raila, who does not believe in losing, didn't leave his name or where he's texting us from? And I believe we've also had other tweets about that. Not necessarily in that context, but what next for Raila? Do you think some of the statements that he's made and some of the things that have happened with him out in the press, I do understand there was a controversial statement he made. I did not hear it myself, so I will not say it, about how we should address him. I don't know. If there's anyone who heard that, then I want to be told. But because I didn't hear it myself, I'm not going to say it, because everybody will start saying, oh, I don't like Raila. Oh, I don't like Uhuru Kenyatta, because that's how it goes in politics. You heard it.
I heard it.
Okay, so talk about it.
Raila was speaking to our friend and colleague, Julie Gishuru, and they had a good conversation going. And at some point when she asked him, so, hey, I'm saying bye, how do I call you? Former, previous, and the guy says no. Clinton remains president.
Right.
There is no other continuance in that position, so I remain prime minister.
Okay.
And I figured, this hopping around in the ndege, you've gone to places where people are still being called president. You're thinking, why did I let go of my title?
Good.
He's the same guy.
I'm glad you said it, because
he's the same
I heard
guy.
about it.
No, he's the same guy who stood. He's the same guy who stood at the late the official of the teachers, whatever. You remember what he said then?
The Nut Union.
Yeah, remember what he said? They said, and I'm not into these things. It's not about, call me Raila. He's the same guy.
Right.
These guys forget, these things are all on tape. He said, call me Raila. But now after hopping around in the ndege a bit, he's sitting in meetings and he's thinking, people are still carrying their titles. And he checks back to the country and they said, I'm still prime minister.
But I think that...
Go figure.
What's in the name?
We are missing the point. I don't think...
No, we're just trying to qualify. Did he say... My point is, did he say
here's a pointed question.
How we carry it forward is an argument.
Yes,
that's
but
an argument.
Should we still refer to him as prime minister?
He's former prime minister, definitely.
No, what he said is he wants
he's
to be
been
called
the only
prime
minister that we've had in this, after the last one that was disbanded. I'm after Mzee Jomo Kenyatta. He was the first prime minister. This is the second. I'm the only one we've only had. So I don't think, whichever way we call him is not, for me, is not an issue. The issue is what party is playing now in terms of the
stage one. Stage one of that was the name thing, because he has called it to himself. We can now argue about whether it was clever or not.
Yes.
But the fact is, he called it to himself. He said, I will remain prime minister.
And here's the thing, and I do agree with you that we should focus on what that role is for him now that he is no longer in parliament or is no longer prime minister. However, you do have to agree that a statement like that is what everybody runs away with and says, oh, now take a look at this. This is what he has said. And regardless of whether we want to drive the conversation in this way,
I think
people are human beings.
I think there's other things to say that are more profound.
Even if you call him prime minister,
but then here's the
office of the prime minister comes with certain privileges and certain whatever. Definitely, even if you call him prime minister, you know very well he's not the prime minister now, because we don't have a prime minister.
That being said,
we only have the president.
Martin,
now we've got past the.
But you still hear your good friend Dwale, even as he's screaming at him. Dwale still says we need to teach the prime minister So he's not the one who's stuck with that title.
So
Even Duale is
Then
stuck
let's
at
go.
prime.
If he's stuck with them,
Okay,
let's
looks like yes. Even
So
Aden Duale
my
has no
challenge-
problem.
my
Fine.
challenge
Then
is
let's
not the
move
titling.
it. Let's move it
Yeah,
forward.
let's-
Although, of course, you do realize that when you make statements like that it doesn't matter sometimes if you've made some really good statements. It's like the word but.
It's not even about good
Let's put it
statements.
this way. Yeah?
It's not about good
if you
statements.
make a
Yeah.
really good statement and you say, oh, this is all going well, but. What
Well,
the word but does is
that's-
to negate everything else that
everything
came
else.
before.
Okay, but what
and
I
it probably
expect-
is the same way. Should he have thought differently about saying that? I don't deny that indeed there is a role to be played by the former Prime Minister. But when he made a statement like that, should he have thought differently about
I'm
how
not-
to address
okay,
that?
yes, maybe that may have issues.
That
But
perhaps
I'm
it
more
just-
concerned
people run
about,
away with that.
In that conversation, there were more profound
Okay.
statements, and I
Fine.
expect that will be out for discussion
Okay.
starting today.
So let's
and
talk about that
the,
then.
The titling will be the least of the conversations going
Right.
forward, because
But
he
it
did
does-
speak.
it does
He
whip
spoke
up
to
the
the
emotions.
ICC. He spoke
Okay.
about the. He still went back to the Supreme Court staff. So
Yes.
there's other things he said, which
Okay.
I want to believe will roll out as very serious discussions going forward.
Right. When we talk about communications, and anyway, asked and answered, we'll move forward from that. What role does he play? The debate still goes on. I think we discussed this last week, the first 100 days of the government. We did discuss the first 100 days of the opposition, or the minority as they're now called in Parliament. But what is his role going forward? This is still something that is of great debate. I believe it was you when we had our press review a few months back who said that Raila will still continue to be a factor in Kenya's politics. He will still continue to grab a headline or two. But how does he carry that forward? Because right now everyone's divided. Some saying he should retire from active politics. Some saying there's still a role for him to play. What do you think, Martin?
With the way they flagged Mutula Kilonzo Jr.'s hand, you think he has retired.
But with the way he did with Kathy Kilonzo's hand, then again.
Watch this week. Trust me, he will be camping in Makueni, and he will be grabbing headlines in terms of whatever he's going to be saying. So for me, I think he's still, the way CORD has still been referring to him, they refer to him as they're still their leader.
Right.
So he's still the CORD leaders, and he's been offering leadership from the outside. And there's been this doing the rounds, and is planning a trip for his governors and senators to go to the United States. I think either this month or next month. So is that the sign of a person who has retired from active politics? I don't think so.
Right.
So for me, he's still going to be around, and is something that he will always continue to grab headlines.
And he does have a way of doing that. I mean, he still, forms part of our discourse.
When he says now, okay, one thing he did claim was his title. In terms of what he's doing now, there's an absence of that leadership. Because even when you say now that he wants to take people to the United States, to what end? How many times has he traveled abroad and seen modern democracies at work? Did we see the results of that in the last election? We didn't. It's unfortunate that he's one of the guys who now says he made no mistake as he was running his campaign, and that's ridiculous. There was tons of mistakes made, which is why he did not get what he wanted. So I'm not scared that he's going to ship out 20 guys to the States. I mean, keep them there for 2 months if you want. That's your problem. But if you yourself never exhibited the country the benefit of sitting in council with the leaders of bigger democracies, so what are you hoping to do? In fact, it will be to his detriment. If he sends these guys out there, they'll come back and realize, actually, we need a new leader. You're stuck in history.
Let's talk
That'll be to his
about the
detriment.
let's
role.
not fault him on that,
Aside from that, okay.
I'm just saying, I wouldn't worry
think-
about that. Let him
fine.
do what he wants to do.
But let's talk
But he
about
needs to
how
define
he
his
provides.
role.
Yes, and
He
let's
needs
talk
to
about how he
define his
provides
role.
leadership, particularly because he's no longer in Parliament. Understood. He is the CORD leader. Fine. But then there were, allegations of, CORD is being led from the outside of this house. To what extent, and I think we've discussed this before, but let's do it again. At what point does the CORD leader, being Raila Odinga, call in the CORD MPs, and what effect does that have? Does he have the power to do that? Does he have the right to do that? Because parliamentarians kept saying we cannot get instructions to members of parliament from somebody who is outside. Okay?
Who's saying that?
Your friend.
Aden Duale.
Yes.
But
That's
Aden Duale is not
Yes.
in court.
Yeah, that's
Yes,
rhetoric.
That's none of his business.
Which is why I'm asking now, to what extent, what powers are those? What would we expect to see, Raila, when he calls court members of parliament? Can he read them the Riot Act? Should he say, okay, guys, in parliament, on the VAT bill, this way, on marriage bill, this way,
I would
on
expect that
this
to
way.
happen.
Is this something we can expect,
Yes,
regardless of
I
what
would
we've been
expect
hearing
that
from
he
the
still has
opposite
that
side?
power.
But that he has been doing. That's why I'm saying.
I would expect that to happen
with
to the
these-
maximum.
With the trip that I'm saying that I've had that is taking governors. Remember, CORD has the majority of governors.
Yes.
And he is if that is the way he believes that the governors from his side are going to be
He
effective,
better start now.
then that's
better
I
start
think that
now.
is part of his plan.
Right.
So I think that is the kind of leadership is the alternative leadership he's showing. So you can't fault him on that. If that's the otherwise, how do you expect him? What other ways do you want him to do?
I still expect him
He
to be
feels
able
that's
to
the way
whip.
to
Yes.
do. Let's
Yes.
go.
I expect him to whip up his people. I expect him to define for them what they're supposed to do. For all intents and purposes, he is still their champion. He's still the leader. It's not. We are not in a place now where there are separate voices speaking for CORD. As far as we're concerned, he's still the leader of that team.
Okay, right.
My worry is bringing him back now. I would rather have his concentration here because I had him. I told you this jumping around in the ndege. You come and start saying things like, I was in this conference, I was in this consultation, I'm starting up a foundation. I'm thinking, we still need you here because you've got a role to play here. Forget about those African titles and African this and African the other. In fact, research needs to be done of all these people conglomerate in those meetings carrying the title of X's and formers. First of all, what is their background? How did they lose their election? Were they pushed out of office? Was it acrimonious? Were they people who were just phased out by time and constitution? Because that informs the discussions they have. Instead, you might end up having a bunch of disgruntled people. They're like, they did that to you too? Yeah, can you imagine after all I did for them? Now, that's not the guy who you need in leadership. So I would want him to concentrate on setting up systems here. If you're still a leader of the opposition, let that start to show. I don't care about those trips you're making and now engaging in unnecessary fights at the VIP lounge and all that. We need you here because we need people to put in check the government of the day. And that for me is a full-time job.
So we are in agreement. Obviously, he still has a big role to play. I mean, he is a big player in the industry.
He has a full-time job. He's got to do it.
Okay, all right. And on that, we are agreed, and regardless of all the conversations. That's what I like about the way it is.
Oh my God.
I've moved from Uhuru Kenyatta sympathizer to Raila sympathizer to I don't like any of them or I like some of them or none of them, but it's politics.
We want to be able to talk about people in their full capacity, exercising the competencies that are due to them. I do not want to discuss Raila Odinga as a regular pedestrian out there. That doesn't qualify discussion. I want to speak to Raila Odinga as a leader.
This is
a
what
champion
I
of the
expect
opposition.
from
Somebody
you
who right now should be showing us, I should have been president. That should be his quest now, to show Kenyans, you've actually missed out on a good president. And that is why I'm sensitive to when he has petty discussions and nonsense arguments. I'm thinking that doesn't qualify that we missed out, which is why I'm saying come back and concentrate on taking up that role so that we can now say there's a definitive voice outside of what we're hearing. Others, we're about to get drowned by the power, and those two chaps are very sharp. The president and his deputy, we will be drowned out by their voices. If these people stop, they have to stop these little squabbles and getting into these sideshows of who did what and who is being investigated by who and who is being done what. They need to be able to tell this country, you actually missed out, so let us see it. That's what we need to see from him.
And that's what you're saying are some of the efforts that he's making.
Absolutely.
And let's see how that bears fruit.
In terms of a leader in the opposition, because they have to provide alternative leadership and they are the alternative government. So definitely in terms of rolling out, there's a whole 5 years. So we can't expect them to do everything in a crunch and expect to see results. So maybe he has his own rollout plan.
And important to state that in as much as, yes, Uhuru Kenyatta and William Ruto as president and deputy are there, they do need to be kept in check because we're all human beings. If we are given unbridled power, then that just becomes, as human beings, any human being.
One of the things
even Jesus had checks and balances. He was answerable to God, right?
One of the things that was not opposition.
No, it wasn't opposition, but there was a check and balance.
Madam.
And then there were the Pharisees.
Be very careful.
There were the Pharisees. I know my faith very well. And there was everybody else that said, no, but this is what I mean, is
Yes,
that everybody is answerable
As
to
we say,
someone.
as we say in Kiswahili, toko huko mbio sana. But let me come back to what I was going to say about the gentleman, Raila Odinga, and why I keep pressing, give us a semblance of opposition. It's because one of the ways you will see that there's no institution in place is in his camp. Nothing is coming out that is of good shape or order. What happens after Makueni, we don't see that coming together. But one of the things he needs to stop doing is he needs to stop being the professor of history. That class is done. Every time you stick a microphone in Raila's mouth, he goes to history. You need to understand, Martin, that age group will understand the history. My age group interacted with President Moi at the time. We're able to make the comparison. But are we the voting majority? We're not. This is not the voting majority of this country. This is not the majority of the people who are issuing the challenges right now. There's a lesser and lesser number of the citizenry that is enchanted to the history lessons he gives. They're interested in the now. So he's got to apply himself to the now. And that is why when he stepped up on a narrative of reform, after claiming side-by-side leadership with President Kibaki, it's now an irony. So you cannot step up and say, I want to do things differently. Until you accept the stuff we did together with this guy, maybe I want to acknowledge those things and then show you that now when I'm on my own, they can be a lot better. But you cannot step up and say you have a new narrative. What happens to those 5 years? You've been flying the Prime Minister's flag. So he needs a new narrative right now. That is the thing that they need to talk about.
And I think we've said this over and over before.
They need a new
Not
narrative.
against Raila, but you know,
getting stuck
we
in
do need
getting
to
stuck.
see
Like
alternative
for example,
solutions,
for
like
example,
you
I'm
said,
not impressed that he will fight IEBC the way he's fighting IEBC. Why? Because he's also culpable. They were part of this formation.
As Ruto did
And
say
also,
during that
and also when he tries to tell us to the extent that certain equipment was purchased and they didn't have time, he of all the people had the experience of being cheated out of elections before, of being in a system that winner took all. When he had the position in government where he should have raised the flag and put those guys on a clock, did he do it? He was the first guy who should have said, the way this thing is going, we don't have the luxury of saying, we'll let IEBC run, and then they ran out of time, and then they came back to us, and then we did this magical intervention. So that is not the way to argue. That's a redundant argument. We need to have now a fresh narrative for this guy, not fighting the systems which he was part of before. That doesn't give any difference.
Martin, let's wind up our discussion. We've got 5 minutes. The big headlines. Yes, I know. I know, right?
5 minutes to go on a break.
I thought you still had a couple of other topics.
I did.
5 minutes.
Well, time does not allow.
This iPad of yours is dodgy.
It's not. I don't use an iPad.
It's on the wrong clock. No, in terms of issues.
It's not on an iPad. I'm as analog as they come. I do
Unleash another one from the paper.
No, because we don't have time, although I'd love to discuss so much more. We don't have time. I did want to talk about the teachers briefly. If we can do that in 1 minute. Teachers are back to work today. That's great. So the deal was brokered between the deputy president and the teachers. And while they were sitting there having, that discussion and brokering a deal, Professor Kaimenyi was ordering the schools to be closed. Why wasn't he part of that discussion again?
It beats me. That's why it's a government that is speaking in tongues, in different tongues, which is a very bad situation of witness there. How do you broker a deal, the deputy president brokering a deal, and the minister, on this side, the secretary, is closing down schools?
He was not in that meeting.
He ought to have been part of the meeting throughout. So it shows there was something amiss with this deal.
So it could have been that, the deputy president stepped in and said, okay, guys, it looks like you're not able to do this, so let me step in and
one of the fears that the country,
that
was not the case.
What was the case?
The way he would work, the speed at which the deputy president responds to things. There's a fear of that because he's a go guy, but now he has to stop and think, what does this do to my boss? Number two, that system of the West Wing really has to kick in for one reason. It's called developing a line. You develop a line where everybody says the same thing. So yes, as much as it was great, it was his personal initiative, but he needs to understand this is not the time for brownie points.
Okay, and for me, yes, for me that did raise a question that, you know, what does that say about Professor Kaimenyi and of course Kambi Kazungu as well.
Worry about those two.
It's like they were not.
Were they not? Yes. Or did he come and take over because he felt that they were not doing, you know, what they should have?
Okay.
Or what was the case? Or do you think he railroaded that
That's the message that was being passed across.
Right.
But I wanted to believe that, honestly, these people were part of the process from the word go. But at what point did they disconnect with the process and decide to go haywire? Believe you me, I don't think Professor Kaimenyi would have just come out of the blues to close down schools without having consulted anyone. Believe me, I don't think that he could have taken such a bold decision on his own. I want to believe all these people knew what was going on,
okay,
and they were in tandem with what was going to happen. But even then, they decided that maybe they were going to show the NAT that this is the route we were going to take. So NAT, having gotten wind of all this, decided to move in fast and try to strike a deal.
Okay, but whichever way, there was something wrong with that picture?
It didn't look very good.
All right.
And you teachers are back to work and you're closing down schools. It looks like a government that is in disarray.
My concern is they need to back up because it is a synergy. It is a teamwork between the president and the deputy that will count. Kaimenyi and Kazungu Kambi, those guys, they didn't even know what hit them.
Okay.
They're out there doing their job.
We have to leave it at that.
But somebody has to have a different conversation there.
We have
and
to
it's
leave it
beyond
at
those
that.
two guys.
Okay, clearly. In less than a minute, just enumerate for us what you think will make headlines.
What will make headlines? Okay, schools are back to work today, but what will make headlines, dominant headlines, is about the by-election in Makueni within this week. We're going to see a lot of activity doing the rounds this week. And also Parliament is also back to this week again, and the issues of the VAT bill, all those coming up in
Parliament. They have
Parliament.
a couple of bills to pass before they go on recess.
Yes,
August
there are a couple
2nd.
of, yes, that has to be before August, the end of August. So there's been that back and forth ping pong about where the bills are being stuck. But Nyachai has come out and said, look here, we don't have any bills with us. All the bills are with the executive. Ask Githu Muigai, he's the one who knows where those bills are. So you remember last week Aden Duale hit out at CIC saying they're the ones delaying the bills. But Nyachai told us over the weekend, we don't have any bills. So it's the same government which needs to tell us where those bills are. So we will need to look out for all those things this week.
Okay. Louis?
Let the bills get sorted. Parliament will be in focus. National Assembly will be in focus. And I just hope we will not really just do crazy things and hammer and tongs and throw everything, including the kitchen sink, out there in Makueni. I mean, if there could be a semblance of a decent kind of a campaign, let's hope Friday will just come and pass. And lessons have to be learned from there at the national level. So I'm just going to be looking at that scene.
All right. Okay. Thank you both for making the time. Clearly, it's never enough. We had an hour, we extended that, and suddenly, when someone says in my ear, 5 minutes, I'm thinking, really? Where did the time go? And indeed, thank you as well for staying with us throughout, seeing all of your texts. And just a disclaimer, by the way, this is politics. In the beginning, no, and I'll say this because when in the beginning, when we talked about, we've been compromised as the media, then we went out and bashed the government, then, you guys are all bashing the government, and then when we talk about, you guys are all bashing Raila, okay, fine. So it's the way it is, it's politics. There you go.
We take on everybody who is doing the wrong thing.
Right. And give praise where it's due.
Yeah,
yes,
exactly.
Indeed. Here's one last text I'd like to leave you with. It says, hi, Raila is right because you cannot have former without having a sitting or a current. Fair point. A mwalimu remains mwalimu till death. Okay, so those are your thoughts, and there's so many other text messages and tweets that we obviously don't have the time to read out, including you who promised us to buy us Minute Maid juice. Thank you very much. Anthony Nyasimi, we already got our Minute Maid juice. Not to worry, we've got our packs. They're just not with us this morning. But yes, they are listening to hurry up with the packs. Thank you so much for joining us on The Way It Is. It's always a pleasure. Makes Mondays worth it, for me at least. Makes it worth waking up to. We will do this again next week, but Sunrise Live continues tomorrow. Please do enjoy the rest of your day and the rest of your viewing. This is KTN, your authoritative channel. Have a very good day. Bye-bye.